Today is another session, another meeting in our series that we called Fearless Hearts, and our idea was to reach out to women in contemplative social action, involved in contemplative social action, who are leaders or setting an example or doing innovative things or have compelling stories to tell, and come and share with us. And uh, I love to see how many men we have, but I have to admit my initial intention was for this to be really inspiring to younger women who are getting started in social action based in contemplation. And but we have all ages, and we have men and women, and people from all over the world. So it's been very successful so far. And so today, our special guest is Ella Reznikova. She works at Karmachuling in Vermont, lives in Vermont, but is from Ukraine, and is a meditation teacher and activist, I think I can say, and is working with groups in Ukraine to bring practice, meditation practice, to Ukraine, and to make other efforts to help the Ukrainian people during this very challenging and tragic time. So I want to thank Ella for being here, and I don't want to embarrass Judith, but Judith Simmerbrown from Naropa University made the introduction. Judith was a guest in this program a few months ago, and we had a nice time together, and she suggested that I get in touch with Ella. So that's why we're here today. So through the kindness of your friends is how things happen. Ella, I'm going to go ahead and mute myself and turn this over to you. And once again, everyone, thank you so much. Thanks for being here.
Hello, everyone. And I'm grateful to the peacekeepers, especially Jeff and Chloe, who invited me here because of something I helped to create, which is meditation and social action dedicated to supporting Ukraine. And this action happened naturally and effortlessly with so much help and generosity of others. And I'm usually not an obvious leader. I prefer to be in the background. It's a deep habit from Soviet Union. But this unjust war just raised me to the occasion and broke my habits. So when the heart opens to such enormous suffering, action happens spontaneously. It's like an art. But this particular art is a very sad one, coming from a place where pain and joy, rage and tenderness, and beauty and ugliness are inseparable. So I knew about Zen peacemakers, about Bernie Glassman. I read about him even in Ukraine, about homeless retreats and Auschwitz retreat, which I plan to, it's on my list to do. And when I was preparing to this presentation, I checked some talks on Zen peacemaker site. And I watched a few wonderful presentation, especially for two women I admire, Judith and Simmerbrown and Natalie Goldberg. And also I happened to notice presentation from 4 people in Israel. After this October 7th, there were 2 Palestinians and 2 Israelis. And this presentation deeply resonated with what I'm facing in contact with people from Ukraine. When I listened to them, I was deeply affected how honored they were, and how they were not afraid to talk about total hopelessness, and that nothing worked in this situation of so much hate and suspicion But in my perception, they actually dropped the spiritual conceptions and show up authentic human beings who had courage to face hopelessness. And like one of them said, that we're not trying to make people feel good when we present what we're going through. And when they question everything they learn, they are were for me true messengers of what they learn. And I'm thinking a lot about this paradox of dropping spiritual certainty, but maintaining dignity. And it is very typical for challenging times when we just become an embodiment of teachings, no matter what we feel. So for me, real teachings is not about words, but how we perceive what we're going through. So I'm here to talk about social action. I'm also in a phase of questioning and checking for myself what works for me. Very often, Bodhisattva, it was this famous Bodhisattva Kshitigarbha. He was famous for going down on a tiny web to hell, to help sentient beings there. And sometimes I'm thinking, did he knew that web can break any second? But he didn't have a choice. And I think about Ukrainian soldiers who go to hell, and their web is breaking constantly in the form of deep trauma, wounds, or death. So what happened when the web breaks? So I will come back to this contemplation a little later, and I want to also talk about not only what a wonderful thing we created, but also about our challenges. But now I want to start by telling you a little bit about my country background, so you can understand this wonderful gathering that we created that is called Sangha for Ukraine, or Compassion for Ukraine. And then we'll open to discussion. So I'm originally from Ukraine, but I currently live in the USA for 26 years. And I was growing under dictatorship, and I was part of underground culture, or how historians call it later, kitchen culture. And our social action was in a form of silent protest, where we refused to have anything to do with the society, communist society, and basically sacrifice all our ambitions and careers. And we didn't have any hope that it would ever change. We had unpleasant encounters with the KGB, and we work in the most unnoticeable, not prestigious jobs, while we were educated ourselves with legal, political, and spiritual literature. It's called samizdat, including Buddhist books. We had a secret, huge network of political dissidents, representatives of all religions, hippies, people of different nationalities, sexual orientation, which was totally unthinkable at 70s and 80s in the Soviet Union. But we also knew that below our underground, there was a much deeper level of underground of people who were for Ukrainian independence from Russia. But not many of us knew them. It was very hidden because these members were risking their lives. If you think about races in this country, it was the same towards Ukrainians and other nations. And I remember in my school, even on the wall, on paper, if people saw two colors of the flag color, blue and yellow, you can be expelled from school, or your parents might be arrested. Just even coincidence of two colors together would get you in real trouble. But even after perestroika in 1985, with relative freedom, these people were still mostly silent for a while because it was still under Russia. And Ukraine, this beautiful, proud country, hardly ever tasted independence. So therefore, I never forget the day of August 24th, 1991, when a blue and yellow flag were raised in our government building and the anthem of Ukraine was performed. People were crying and hugging, and we were invited for the first time inside of the government building to see these dusty, gloomy offices where clerks worked hard, not only to limit people's freedom, but also impose Russian superiority and pressure on Ukrainians and other nationalities. We were so elated that we drank vodka from the bottle. And our elder generation, who went through wars and resistance, started to wear their old uniforms, military uniforms of resistance that had actually buried and never thought to wear again. And I remember my ex-Ukrainian husband's grandfather was very sad that he had burned his uniform. So I will never forget how he, in 95-year-old, was listening to the radio and being so happy, but very, very quiet. And then he said, be careful. Don't show too much joy because it wouldn't last long. And of course, the independence brought many problems and issues, but the country started to breathe freedom in all delightful and messy ways. Many things came to the surface, and we learn more about suppression, artificial hunger that killed in 1 year almost 4 million Ukrainians, just 1 year, 1932-33. So, and as everything else in Ukraine, Buddhist Dharma started to spread, and including Shambhala teachings of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. And teachers started to come to Ukraine from Europe and United States, and a strong Sangha was created. And we would come with my American husband to teach a lot. And I remember last our visit in 2018, it was already feeling of war because of Donbass and Crimea. And I remember some kind of strange tears without stopping when I was walking last day on this ancient cobblestone streets in Lviv, my town. And now I know why I was feeling like that. So on February 24th, 2022, Russia launched a horrific war trying to take Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, in 2 days. It was almost surrealistic. It felt like the world stopped breathing. It was so unbelievable in 21st century. My friend from Ukraine, who is here actually, so happy to see her. She was one of the founders of Shambhala Sangha in Kiev, didn't want to evacuate, but her daughter from Canada and a few friends encouraged her to escape with her mother and one other elderly woman. There was a lot of shelling, and we would track every step on the train, find cars, arrange meeting on the border, find an apartment in Warsaw, arrange flight to Halifax. And I didn't sleep all night, and nobody slept all night. And it was strange feeling of social action. I wasn't thinking about myself, and it felt so healthy and so energizing. My teacher once said, if you want to be happy, think about others. If you want to be miserable, think about yourself. So for me, it wasn't just words anymore. And then we all started, and I started to follow all these beautiful stories of people loyalty, of people bravery, raising of patriotic mood. It was so contagious, so moving, so beyond selfishness. It's like your country became a mother. Actually, they call Ukraine mother, Nenka in Ukraine, Nenka. So if we don't protect your mother, it will kill the spirit of the whole nation. Then one of my close friends, and I think she's also here, arranged Zoom together the Shambhala community to do Tonglen for Ukraine. And Tonglen, I don't know if people know, everybody, it's practice of sending compassion and love to people who suffer and taking their suffering and pain to yourself. And around 250 people gathered on Zoom. It was just a few days after war, and it was so powerful and so like such a support. So we felt so inspired that we decided to continue our gathering until energy would be over, you know. So but we still gather 2 years and a half. We never stopped. And though we're much smaller now, but nevertheless, it's unbelievable, unbelievable event. So usually we have a 30 minutes meditation and Tonglen, and then we have discussion 30 more minutes. And we were like just first pioneers because it never happened before. We have to make everything with our bare hands. People would show up with Ukrainian flags on their background, learn how to say glory to Ukraine in Ukrainian, Slava Ukraini, and we always end our meetings, Slava Ukraini, Slava to heroes. And the gatherings were powerful. Everybody was on fire. Our hearts were full. It was real and outrageously, wrathfully compassionate. We were holding Ukraine, and it was magical and non-conceptual because we were all feeling the same. We didn't need to explain it. We were united by the same care and feeling of injustice. And all participants offer some talents and skills. We had a schedule with everyday presentation, meditation instructions. A teacher were giving talks. We had a historian, politicians could talk about history, how events were developed in the front. Artists and musicians offered concert recitals, and we created videos. Somebody created website, another person maintained it. We learned how to fundraise, help with recordings, with being Zoom host, mailing list, donation funds, and we also invited people who were knowledgeable in trauma, mediation, ancestral connections, healing, and everybody without exception was contributed something, especially how to listen and cry and laugh and feel discomfort and pain. We actually called it sometimes bearing witness. You'll be happy to know, Jeff. So we were supporting Ukraine by Dharma, love, listening, and of course, monetary help. So our website has Zoom link, announcement of the main events, and reports about donation outcomes for every month, and many different offerings and recordings. You're welcome to visit. I put a chat later. But the most important factor in our gathering was that our Ukrainian friends show up as some part of our Buddhist community, but also volunteers, people who live in Ukraine. And also we had refugees and diaspora. And it was especially powerful to practice with Ukrainians in their dark houses without electricity sometimes during shelling, and sometimes they would lead meditation and they participate in discussion, or they would explain to us the culture, nature of conflict. They were very generous to give us glimpse of their dangerous world. Now a few of them volunteered to the Ukrainian army, but one of them still come occasionally. Volunteers tell us about their dangerous work, often near the front line, and show us slides with elderly, sick people, how they deliver medication to them because they're not able to evacuate. And sometimes they evacuate people. And we also help single mothers and their children, provide medications for wounded soldiers, ammunition, car repairs, support for widows, parents of soldiers, and we also even help abandoned pets. And so we feel like we are doing something, and people showing slide and pictures, and we're all part of this network. We are part of supporting Ukraine. So we had a culture, and we have a culture of meditation practice and social action. It has a feeling of reality, that we are not just meditation sangha, and we are with them. And we also continue to do funeral ceremonies for killed soldiers, and the list becomes longer and longer. We read their names, and we are kind of family. Even when Ukrainians are not around, we talk about our life, health issues, birthday celebrations, and we already had a few deaths, sickness, few babies were born, and we had even romantic relationship because of our Tongvan gathering. So our goal first was to support Ukraine by Dharma, care, and financial donation, and listen to them to understand and feel what they're going through. I remember one time we intentionally during meditation played air raid alert to just feel what they feel when they hear it. And our second goal was to awake from our comfort zone ourselves in safety, and to use Dharma as a real weapon of awakening. So we can also become warriors instead of, like we say in Ukraine, office yogis. So it was an opportunity to feel the teachings in a fresh way and to understand war. And I want also to talk about challenges we encounter, but before that, I will just stop to hear from you questions, reflections, something, because yeah, I don't want to overwhelm you with all I want to say.
Yeah, if anyone would like to make a comment or ask Ella a question, let's see, we have 33. I can't see everybody. Some people have their video off, but if your video is on, you want to wave your hand, that's okay. Or if you want to go to under reactions or react, there's a virtual hand that you can raise in there. So please,
Jeff and I can actually see everybody, so.
okay. Well, there are more people than we can see.
Oh, okay.
Some people have their cameras off, so.
Okay.
Somebody must surely have a question.
Or our group can share their feelings of our group.
Yeah. Yeah, anything is fair.
Or maybe it's only I see it this way.
Hi, Annie. It looks like you have your hand up.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Jeff and Ella, for presenting this very important Zoom call. I just wanted to mention briefly that a few months ago, and Jeff, you could help me out with the names, there were a couple of other Ukrainian organizations that gave presentations about providing medical assistance and things like bandages and medicine for people who were injured. And I lived in Washington, D.C. for a number of years, and there was recently, the last time I was there, I noticed a Ukrainian restaurant had opened on one of the popular blocks, and it was always filled with people. And I thought, oh, that would be good to contact them and find out if they would be able to help some way financially or give us a list of other Ukrainian supporting organizations. So I still have to call them. My friend wrote to them, but didn't receive an answer. So that's something on my list that I'm telling you now to bookend it for myself so that I do follow up on this work, because it would be helpful if we could find organizations here. And also in the US, I wrote to the Ukrainian Institute of Modern Art in Chicago, which I used to frequent when I worked there, and asked them for help, but I haven't heard any response at all. I'll have to send the email again. Thank you.
Thanks, Annie. We'll help hold you accountable.
Okay.
And for everyone, Ella just put the website address for her organization, which would be one of those organizations to support Annie. She put it in the chat. So, and the website is quite good. Visit the website and you can see how you can help.
Yeah, and we have reports every month how we spend money, and we need a lot of money. There's few volunteers here that help so much. Irina, Yana.
Anyone have a question or a comment or something to share? Especially someone from Ella's group, that would be wonderful.
I could go.
Thanks, Yana.
I'm not prepared to speak, but it was really nice to hear Ella talk about this and just know a little more about the process of how the group came together. And I've been part of the group for the last few years, and I know that a lot of incredible work has been done by the group, by all the donations and all the volunteers. And I'm the one that helps like single moms and some things for soldiers as well, like tourniquets and medications. And usually there are specific donations that come in, and folks will ask these donations to be allocated to a certain cause. And through my network of volunteers in Ukraine, I, always just connect with the two, and the donation goes directly to the volunteers who are able to, to provide the service or to buy the supplies, and they send us receipts and pictures, and then Ella shares it with the folks who donated. And yeah, I'm just grateful. My experience has been that sometimes when I have a request come in, and of course, like in the third year of the war, the donations are just not at all what they were in the first year. In the first year, I mean, I raised just from random people. It was just, I think it was close to 120,000. And it was like 20 in the second year. And this year it's under 10. So the donations is just completely different. But anytime I've had a request, Ella like pops up magically in my messages and is like, oh, hey, I have a few $100s that you could, send to the single moms. And I've always been surprised about this universal balance. When I have a request, there's always someone who's offering the help. And it usually happens within a span of 2 days, which I don't know. I love this kind of magical, I don't know, universal, I don't know what you call it. And I love being like the agent in the middle, that these requests come in and then there's people pop up who want to help. Yeah, so thank you for doing this for so many years and persevering like through all the drama and the pain. And I remember maybe my first meeting, I was like, it's so easy to be a Buddhist, when you're in karma choling and you don't have to, do certain things or take care of certain things, or you're studying or you're contemplating, or you're at a point in your life where you're not grinding it out in work, and and your relatives are calling you and the bombs are falling from the sky, and it's hard. It took some time to really like marry the two, the contemplation and then like the real life that I never thought would get this hard for me. I never thought I would have to live through a war, nor did I ever think in my 37 years on this planet that I would have to support my mother going through a war, all of my friends, my sister, her kids, her husband, everyone, soldiers on the front lines, mothers who are like pregnant in the wartime and they're still having babies, like choosing to have babies even though they have like no security. I'm not qualified. Even my therapist at the beginning of the war was like, I'm not qualified to support someone through a war, and she just dropped me. And I found myself in a situation where I had to find the resources on the inside to to be that person for the folks in Ukraine while living in the US. So I'm grateful for all the support and all of the compassion, and for some of the comments that came out of the meetings that were like, that explained to me how to take it in, how to transform it, how to find resources for myself, say out in nature, or draw on some other resources to support myself. So yeah, thanks for the friendship and for all the knowledge and the support.
Thank you, Yana. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Ella, I have a question, and or maybe Yana or someone else here can help answer also. We hear news about what's going on in Ukraine that has to do with, I don't know, the conflict and damage to buildings and loss of life and kind of all of the objective aspects of this. What I'm interested to hear you comment on, or someone else, is how are their hearts? How are their hearts? As an American, I've not had this experience of having war in my town. And we get, I'll speak for myself, I get thrown off center with the political situation or with COVID or whatever it might be. But Ukrainian people went through COVID and then went right into a war. How are they doing? emotionally or spiritually or subjectively. And maybe there's not one, I'm sure there's not one answer to that question either, so.
I mean, I would be happy to just make a small comment that I think recently in the last, just this last summer, that a lot of people are very, very exhausted. Like in Ukraine, a lot of volunteers who are constantly dealing with requests from the front lines for supplies and wounded people and dead people, and then just kind of a lack of stability, not being able to go to work or losing their income, losing their housing or whatever it is, that the major mood is that Ukrainians need help, like they need NATO troops to come help. And this is something that hasn't been talked about yet, but I think it's coming. I think this is what we're going to see. Ukrainians have been holding off this, huge army for 2.5 years, and they are exhausted. I mean, it's 100% you are either serving at the front lines or you are serving not on the front lines, but you are working for the war, you're supporting volunteers, you're like a support to your community, you're taking care of the elders, you're delivering things, medicines to people who can't leave the house because of the air raid sirens. So whatever it is, you're constantly a part of the war effort, as they call it. So the exhaustion, and I think a lot of people have PTSD. So my mom has like huge PTSD. She is in Kharkiv, which is about, 45 minutes to the Russian border by car. And so every noise now triggers her into some kind of response, because, she had planes fly over her house. She had bombs explode, next to her. Constantly things exploding, if Ukrainians shoot things out of the sky, there were some things that exploded up above her house, blew out her windows. Few times we replaced the windows, but so now even just a car like accelerating on the street outside of her window will trigger her into like what's the noise? What is it? So it'll take probably years for folks who were under these circumstances to really deal with the trauma. And I think that a lot of them are kind of like frozen. So everything's frozen. I'm just like putting one foot in front of the other, picking one thing up, putting it down, and just every day until, we get to a situation where we're not constantly barraged by bombs. I think that's my feeling in general.
Thank you, Yana. Ella, anything to add about that?
I'm going to mention something about that when I talk about our challenges, because it's part of that. But Yana drawing very precise picture.
Anyone else have a question or a comment before we resume? Larry, you have I see your hand up. Thank you, Larry. Much appreciated.
Just because no one from the group has yet spoken, I thought I would just say that the feeling of what we do together is that we feel together, and Ella is our leader. She speaks for us, but we all who participate try and feel and offer that as a way of waging peace. At least that's my phrase or my feeling from within. And I just think that it's remarkable how important that is. We're not in war in North America, but in a certain way the world is feeling a little bit as if it's at war. And this is an offering that could be duplicated and spread. So I love our group and we'll continue to do it as long as we do it.
Thank you. Thank you, Larry.
Bill?
Yes, I would like to comment on the spirit of the Ukrainians and to acknowledge what Yana was saying, and that the exhaustion, depletion of spirit that we do see. But I almost didn't raise my hand because I don't want this to seem frivolous in any way whatsoever. But one of the things that I've noticed is the Ukrainian friends that I have. I'm Ella's husband, and so I get to see one-to-one video talks sometimes with friends in Ukraine that I know, that I have met in Ukraine and have shared Dharma environments with, teaching classes together, training them to teach classes. But what I've noticed in their exhaustion is that there's a spirit, there's a light that has not yet gone out. And I talked to some people, and I know these people, and now they're in uniform and they're on the front or they're in the army, and I'm talking with them and I'm full of anguish, and they're laughing, and they're quick with a Putin joke. If there's a Putin joke, they're going to share that Putin joke. And there's a kind of gallows humor that they will not let go of. So I again, not to in any way diminish the horror of what's happening to this culture, but there's a spirit that I swear to Buddha that will rise again, because it has not gone anywhere. And they continue to practice, and they continue to lead us in practice, and their Dharma does not diminish in the midst of their of what is happening to their culture. And so I just wanted to mention that when I turn on the Zoom screen and talk to a friend who's now in uniform, who we never had any intentions of being in an army, and he tells a Putin joke, and then he laughs more heartily than even I do, that should be noted. The spirit of Ukraine is still there, and Dharma is still being practiced. And I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. That's really heartening to hear that. Thank you. Thank you. Ella, would you like to resume, do you think?
Yep. Thank you, everybody. It's just, even people don't talk, but I already feel so much care. So, and now I want to talk about challenges, because why I became Buddhist is because we don't escape reality, and we don't go to this kind of beautiful spiritual dream. And I feel like it's good for me to address that. So since war started, I started to asking myself how Buddhist ideas can be applied in the times of war, and what it really means in the time of war. No harm, no taking sides. Everybody has Buddha nature, basic goodness. And this exploration became very real, very juicy, and really irritating. So we created an incredibly compassionate society. But every group eventually encountered challenges. So first challenge, we had two. First challenge was about how to combine Buddhist ideas with raw emotion of, for instance, rage or perception of an enemy. How to combine the theories that all beings deserve compassion yet feeling of taking sides. When we feel safe and not threatened, as some people mention, it is easy to contemplate Dharma and hard to understand those who are losing loved ones, place to live, their country. So sometimes Ukrainians did not feel help from spiritual talks. They invoke even more questions. For instance, peace also means war. Sometimes we need to fight for peace. And soldiers know that they might die. They are all bodhisattvas in some sense because they don't need to contemplate suffering, impermanence, death. They're in the middle of this. And of course, most of them are not trained how to work with trauma. But even the most experienced practitioners can break in this situation. Let's just be honest. The web to hell that I mentioned before can be broken any second for all of us. And soldiers or civilians in Ukraine might not need to hear from Buddhists not to kill, not to fight, not to feel rage or hate, and that Russians have basic goodness. It doesn't mean that it's not true, but not in the time of war, because compassion means intelligent, subtle perception about timeliness and sensitivity. For instance, during the meeting that mentioned with Palestinian Israelis, peacemakers that I mentioned before, the mediator made decision, the mediator noticed how they were traumatized. So she changed format and asked people not to make any comments and in special opinions, just to listen. So if we just like adopt prefabricated Dharma theory, how to think, how to behave, and we don't have to put our effort and energy, so our conception might not have life, no blood or juice. So how we avoid spiritual bypassing? Our tendency to use spiritual ideas and practices to avoid facing psychological issues, emotional wounds, fear, anger. How to not hide in spirituality. Because spiritual practice takes us deeper, but sometimes makes us numb. So I think that for me, peace is more observing with honesty the most devastating feelings we have. And if we talk about relative and absolute realm, I think during war, relative realm doesn't have luxury to indulge in absolute. But I don't know any teachings that talk about this. Or at least I didn't understand them. And another challenge that we encounter is that Ukrainians now are divided because they're so exhausted. And one part of Ukrainians want to stop the war at any cost, saying that we can't win and we just lose good lives. And another group wants to continue defending their country. They feel that they protect something bigger than themselves, even their families, even the future of their children. They protect the spirit of the whole nation that could hardly ever was able to breathe. And of course, every party has right to have their opinions. But our group started with compassion for Ukrainians that fights for their independence. Like sometimes I'm thinking how we in America honoring the ancestors of indigenous Americans. And what if people said about them, what some say about Ukrainians, why did they fight if there was no hope? But that was exactly what made them our ancestors, our source of inspiration, warriorship. So when I choose social action, I am making a choice. Even if on background there is openness and acceptance, sometimes people think that not taking side make us spiritual, but my baby, sometimes it just make us ineffectual. And of course, I'm talking particular about Ukraine situation because it may not be applied to other wars and conflict. I just don't know if it applied. I thought about Ukraine mostly. So I feel that I need to go to a place when the mind is okay not to know. And where genuine feelings, our deep passion, are ones who make a decision that can be tough and may contradict the ideas of not taking sides or inclusion. So my question for you would be very helpful because it's hard to contemplate it by myself all the time. I did do talk with our Tongan people about that. So I have a question to you. How we work with our tendencies to make everything spiritually smooth and positive, and why sometimes spiritual ideas prevent us to make tough decisions, and why such wonderful ideas as inclusion, equality, basic goodness might at the same time be an obstacle to make the right choice. So that's my question to you.
Ella, if you don't mind, would you repeat your question, just to make sure everybody gets it?
Should I just put okay. Okay.
It's kind of like three parts to it, yeah.
Yeah. So first, our tendency to work to make everything smooth and spiritual. And then why these ideas prevent us to make tough decisions. And basically, third question is a little bit the same. It's how in ideas as inclusion, equality, basic goodness, Buddha nature might be an obstacle to make the right choice. How these ideas can be an obstacle. That's kind of very big paradox.
What a rich question. This is wonderful. I hope everybody hears the question, and I invite everybody to participate. Please go ahead and raise your hand and share if you have either an answer to Ella's question, or a question to Ella's question, or a comment on Ella's question.
And maybe you totally disagree with me. It's fine. It's good.
Yeah, please.
Judy, I'm so happy you were saying something.
Yes, I'm so sorry I won't be able to stay till the very end. So I wanted to make sure to, this is such an important question, Ella. And it relates to the presentation that I did a few months ago where we began talking this way. What I wonder is if on some kind of level, we don't take sides, but we still engage. We still make decisions, but not decisions once and for all, that are decisions that tie us into a solid conceptual position, but perhaps a decision to respond, or maybe the spontaneous response to suffering in a way that is most appropriate for that situation, without getting stuck in partisanship around this. Because I think you're absolutely right, this kind of contradiction between taking sides, and that becomes a way to excuse ourselves from actually helping or acting in some kind of way. And it seems to be a cowardice to do that. And it's also missing an opportunity for bodhisattva activity. And so just thinking about this, in our environment, even in the US, we have a lot of this kind of split. But just what you're describing in terms of Ukraine, of course, this kind of exhaustion and just the desire for a good human life can lead us in so many different directions. And I'm wondering how we can simultaneously not not become biased, but also go deeply to the greatest values of human good and human culture and human care, recognizing that people go a lot of different directions in preservation of that kind of sense of goodness and care. If I were in Ukraine and closer to this conflict, I have no idea how I would feel. Could in no way pass judgment on anyone for whatever decision they would make or whatever acts that they getting involved with, because under that kind of duress, extended duress, so difficult. And just remembering speaking to the group and talking to a couple of the young men who were soldiers who were saying how hard it was to not take sides when you're faced with life and death on the battlefield. So I've mostly wanted to thank you for your question and say that just is there a way to have some kind of equanimity in terms of sides and yet still spontaneously respond to the situations that we're confronted with from the depth of our human goodness.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you.
Thanks, Judith. Susan, I see your electronic hand. Thank you so much. Be sure to unmute. There you go.
Okay. Hi, I just had this one thing to say. I've been sitting Zazen for about 30 years. Not that it makes any difference, really. But I'd go to the Upaya Zen Center, for a month-long retreat. And I talked to my son about it. And then, you can go online and you can see them sitting in Zazen in the morning and the evening. And I remember showing my son, and he said, gosh, that's so wonderful. He said, it's so peaceful. They're so peaceful. And I looked at him and I said, it's not. All those people have all the feelings that humans have. They have rage and anger and all the feelings. I mean, it looks peaceful, and it is, but it's an aspiration. It's an aspiration, and it's not like a Mary Poppins peacefulness. It's, I myself, of course, if anybody's sat in meditation, they know exactly what it's like. And I remember a story. I won't take too much more time, but I remember a story that one of the monks told me, or I went in because I was very angry at somebody sitting next to me in the retreat, which was a silent retreat for like a month. And every time we would sit for hours, he would have this horrible, and he'd do that every few minutes. Well, really, after a while, I just got so enraged. I was so enraged, and it was so intrusive. And I went in to talk with this Buddhist monk, and I was telling the story, and he told me a story. And the story was, in Los Angeles, there used to be a bookstore, a famous bookstore. It was full of Zen books. And there was an old woman who went in, and she was looking for a book about, I can't remember his first name because I'm old, but Cohen, what's his name? The singer. Oh, okay. But anyway,
Leonard.
Leonard.
Leonard
Yeah,
Cohen, Leonard Cohen, famous, and he was a Zen Buddhist too. But anyway, she was looking for a book where he talked about being in retreat, and she wanted to know what it was like to be in retreat. Well, she came back to the guy who said, "Oh yeah, they're right over there. You'll find one." So she went and found it, and she read some of it. And she came back and she said, "You know, I looked in this book, and um, he says that he felt like killing the person next to him. That's not true," she said, "is it?" And this was the punk monk. I can't remember his name, but anyway, he said, "Well, obviously, madam, you've never sat in retreat." And I'll tell you, it really liberated me because I thought, that's exactly right. You have your feelings, you're not inhuman. You're going to have rage sometimes. And it's all part of life, really, not the rage, but the intrusion, the misery, the suffering, the horribleness of it too, along with the beauty and the ecstasy, and so that really was very heartening for me. And so I tried to convey that to my son, that yes, these are human beings and they're sitting and they have an aspiration and a practice. They have a practice they're devoted to. But no, it's not Mary Poppins, and they're not sitting in there having tea and cookies, and they're not all peaceful. Some of them are really miserable with their feelings that they're trying to get some insight or to let go. So anyway, that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. Anyone else have a question or an answer to Ella's comment, or a different view, or anything to share? Annie, thank you. Oh, and I see two other hands. Good. Thanks, everyone. Annie, go ahead. Oh, you're muted, Annie. Huh, still muted. Tell you what, Annie, we'll come back. Maybe play with your mute button, and we'll go to Jacqueline, and then we'll come back to you, Annie, if you can get unmuted.
Hi, thank you so much, Ella, for this presentation and for that wonderful question. I just wanted to say something about basic goodness, that because there were so many pieces to your question, and that was the piece that I was drawn to. From my understanding, basic goodness doesn't mean that everything's hunky-dory. It means that it's the ground underneath all of the kleshas and other stuff going on, and which we all have at any point, regardless of how much meditation we do or anything. And it's just the ground underneath, and to me, for me, the value of that teaching is to stay grounded, that yes, there's this awful stuff, but there's something underneath there. And I think there's a lot of inquiry that goes into being able to see that, but I think that's a real value of the Buddhist perspective, is to, while all of this is going on, it's like the ocean has all the waves and the storms and everything, but underneath, deep underneath, there's a stillness. And for me, that's the value of remembering the teaching on basic goodness.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Maybe I didn't express myself precisely. I don't deny that. What I'm saying is sometimes when you say somebody who is in pain that your enemy has basic goodness, it just timing is not right. We
No.
can wait a little bit. That's what I meant. You know?
Thanks for that clarification, Ella. Ed Pepantonio, I see your hand. Would you
Yes,
like to go?
yeah, thank you to everyone, but particularly to Ella for really a heartfelt and piercing talk. So I don't think there's anything inconsistent with the ability to fight and being a Buddhist. Let's take a pretty easy example. I'm a Ukrainian, I'm drafted. I'm given a rifle, or these days, a pretty sophisticated weapon. And I'm told to fire at a target, and that target ends up at an apartment house in Russia, kills civilians. That act would appear to be contrary to what we believe as Buddhists. Yet, the soldier made his decision to what he believes fight for his country, and he did that. I think the disconnect comes, or let me rephrase it. The connect is the motivation. Is what is the purpose, the reason for performing a violent act? I'd contrast that with a Honduran cartel member who goes in and shoots up a residence in a search for turf. So, and again, this is classic Buddhist doctrine, right? Motivation, and the decision that you as an individual make for your actions.
So thank you, Ed. So you're talking about motivation, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Annie, I'm hoping you. There
Yeah,
you go.
I think
You
it's okay now.
Yeah, you got it.
Quite a lot of juggling that technology. Thank you for your patience. And thanks for the questions, Ella. I don't know. That's my answer. I don't know. And I won't know until I am in the experience. And then I'm going to have to trust that what I'm doing is what aligns with my values. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
There is Angela and Anne.
Yeah, Anne, I see you. Well,
Angela also.
Do I go or Angela?
Go ahead, Anne.
Okay, thank you. I don't have a great answer either, but what occurs to me is that some of our rigid responses have to do with not listening and not knowing. I'm really struck by having read an article in the New York Times yesterday or the day before about these new glide bombs. They glide into towns and destroy whole towns. And a soldier who was across the street, basically, or down the block from one of these bombs, 6,000-pound bombs, some of them. And he said that it was like a strong wind went through his entire body and went through and around each of his organs. And we can't even contemplate that except for natural disasters or something. So, thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Anne. And Angela, I don't see you, but I see that you've got your hand up. Would you go ahead and unmute, please?
Yeah. Hello. I wanted to circle back to a question you had about cultural activities in the Ukraine. My first cousin, his name is Hobart Stanley Earl, is the artistic director of the Odessa Philharmonic in the Ukraine. He has been their artistic director and principal conductor for over 30 years. And I haven't been in touch a lot with him during this time. I know that he moved to Germany with his Ukrainian wife to be with her mother. But they have continued to rehearse and practice and play concerts through this period, sometimes rehearsing with smaller groups of the orchestra in different parts of, even in Germany or in Ukraine. And I looked on their schedule and they're playing 2 concerts in Odessa on September 1st and 2nd to celebrate City Day in the hall, the Philharmonic Hall in Odessa. So I looked up, I'll put a link in the chat. And I wanted to say that my cousin has a lot of energy, and he, just like sitting in quiet meditation, looks peaceful. Being the artistic director of an orchestra in the Ukraine might look smooth and easy, but it has really been something. He has had to negotiate on the tarmac of airports to get the double bass instruments on the plane with the orchestra because someone was telling him there wasn't room. So there's, he's really been a warrior in some way, in his own way. So I'll put that in the chat. And you can look at their site and see there's YouTube videos, there's recordings and all kinds of things. I also just wanted to say that I have been a part of this group, the Shambhala Tonglen, for a long time. I was a Zoom host on a regular basis, and I had never personally witnessed a grassroots movement the way this one unfolded. And I noticed that Junko is here, and I remember the day we were asking Yuri about the emotional health of the children that were in a refugee gathering with their mothers. And when Yuri shared about it, Junko said, could they use art therapy? And that began a conversation that led to an art therapist and a psychologist meeting with children on a regular basis, and our group paying them and also contributing supplies for the children. And we've had this amazing opportunity to see the children's work shared in our group. So I just wanted to hats off to Junko, who's here, and thank you, Ella. And it's been really touching to be a part of the group. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela.
Mm-hmm.
I
We
think
have just a few more minutes if anyone else has a
Cynthia
question.
and Junko.
Oh, I see. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Cynthia, please.
I would just like to say that it was Faith Miller who made the suggestion for the art therapy. It wasn't me, and I don't want to take that credit, so it goes to Faith. Thank you.
Okay, got it.
Cynthia, did you change your mind?
No, I'm not sure what happened to the hand there, but yes, well, since Angela brought up some aspects of culture, it just, I wanted to say a few things about that and how powerful that has been in terms of this group and part of what has happened. So first of all, I mean, Ella talked before beautifully about how we have, delved into the history and all sorts of information, learning more about Ukrainian situation, which I think is actually one of the huge values in terms of, learning, we're all motivated to help, but to actually understand the depth and longevity of this conflict and the how complex it is and for how many essentially centuries this has been going on. And then a shout out, of course, to Irina, who has provided a lot of that historical and cultural background for us. So I just, I thanks to you for that, because I think it's been very eye-opening. But specifically, that one aspect of this conflict is that in addition to the horrific loss of life and the destruction of the infrastructure and cities and environment of Ukraine, the specific targeting of the culture and aiming to eradicate the culture, to pretend that it does not exist, is one of the things that I found has been, obviously one of the most powerful lessons that, wasn't something that was necessarily something that as a ordinary American you're going to grow up knowing, but this has really put it into, focus so clearly. And in my little role of updating the website, one of the things I've been doing recently is all of the articles that focus on that topic about, the destruction, the deliberate, specific destruction of, they target publishers who publish Ukrainian literature in Kharkiv, for example, was recently, but all of these different ways in which they deliberately target, when they raid the museums and specifically try to take all these artifacts, clearly it is such a specific aim to reinforce the idea that Ukraine does not exist and should not exist as a people, as a culture, as a sovereign nation. So I just wanted to say that I think understanding more the depth of this has been really helpful and meaningful to me. And I guess that's all. Thank you.
Jacqueline, it looks like you have another comment?
Yes, I thank you for that, Cynthia. I've been really engaged with that piece of it as well. I've made it a point since the beginning of the war to study the culture, the Ukrainian culture, which has been because I know it's been under attack, and I've been kind of wanting to be supportive of that incredible. I'm an artist, and so the art culture in Ukraine is, I didn't know anything about this before. It's absolutely splendid the way the buildings are painted. Everything is, there's a childlike beauty to the Ukrainian art forms that was formerly unknown to me, but that I'm now studying because I love it, and have gone on to support artists in Ukraine that are current artists in Ukraine as a piece of, we all, what do? We all do different things to support the cause. And so anyway, I just wanted to give a shout out to the artists in Ukraine and the beautiful culture of art that's there.
Thanks, Jacqueline.
I see Irina has her hand up.
Yeah, I just would like to add that you saw a lot of Ukrainian arts, music, literature, but biggest part of it is on the title of Russian. And even now in museums around the world, in collection, because everything was stolen. It is a part of the problem. And name Russia, it is late name. Originally, it is a name lands around Kiev, and that's why for Putin was so important to have Kiev, to capture Kiev, because without Ukraine, all this Russian history doesn't exist. And that's why, like, for example, as an artist, you know a lot about avant-garde. They call it Russian avant-garde. And around the world, it's known as a Russian avant-garde. But the biggest part of these artists are Ukrainian, who was born in Ukraine, educated in Ukraine, worked in Ukrainian Academy of Art. And even me, who was born in Kiev, I realized that Ukrainian had independence, had own state. I was almost 20, because all this information was completely hidden. Nobody knows. We thought that Ukraine doesn't exist because it's cool. All history was edited, and now it is a process that very slowly Ukraine take back her own history. It's very important. I just would like to tell you, and thank you so much, and Ella and all people who take part in this discussion. I'm going to Ukraine on Friday because my mom is in hospital in emergency, and when I will come back, I can tell you more about Ukrainian life.
Be safe, sweetheart.
Thank you, Irina. Ella, we just have a few minutes left. Would you like to close with a few comments?
Yeah, I just very grateful to you all who come here and who care about Ukraine. If you came to Ukraine, if you visited Ukraine, you would never forget it. It's like fall in love. It's just guaranteed. One time I brought 10 people from Vermont to my town, and they knew why I'm doing that. You know, sometimes they say, oh, you're just praising your town. But so, and Ukraine needs help. Ukraine needs support. So if you have any, and I know how many other things happening that need support, but if you have any heart connection, please help anybody. Help us, help. There's so many good organizations and people around. They need to know that you care, because you are example of democracy, and they want that. They need that. So, and feel them, and let yourself not to know, and just feel. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ella. And there are, if everyone might take a look in the chat, there are a number of links in there. Ella put a link to her organization's website, plus a number of other things there. So I'll leave it open for a minute here, so you have a chance to copy that. Once we close the Zoom, those will go away. So copy them off onto your phone or your computer or something like that. And once again, I invite everybody to to join us at Zen Peacemakers. No obligations, it's free. It takes less than a minute to go to the website and sign up, and then be sure to sign up for the newsletter as well. That's how you learn about what we do. I will mention coming up here soon, in the latter part of November, we will, and I believe Jacqueline is going, we will have our 27th bearing witness retreat at Auschwitz-Birkenau, bearing witness to the Holocaust for a week. And it's open to everyone, and this is November 17th through 23. It's open to everyone, and you can get all the information about that on the website, but we'd love to have you join us there. So, and with that, Ella, thank you. I so appreciate it. This was really wonderful. It's for sharing your teaching and your perspective, and we hope maybe we can do this again sometime too. So thank you everyone for coming. Slava Ukraini.
Героям
Слава
слава!
Україні!
Героям слава!